this episode, we shift from individual audit activities to the larger discipline that keeps an audit organized, credible, and useful from beginning to end. For a new learner studying for the Certified Information Systems Auditor (CISA) exam, audit project management is where many separate ideas begin to connect because planning, communication, evidence collection, timing, and reporting all have to move together instead of drifting in different directions. An audit is not just a smart person checking a system and writing down concerns when something looks wrong. It is a structured piece of work with a purpose, a schedule, defined responsibilities, expected outputs, and constraints that must be managed carefully if the final result is going to be trusted. That is why project management matters so much in audit work. It helps ensure the audit stays focused on risk, uses time wisely, treats people fairly, and produces findings that leadership can actually use to improve control, accountability, and decision-making. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. At its core, audit project management means guiding an audit the way any serious professional effort should be guided, with clear goals, thoughtful planning, ongoing coordination, and disciplined follow-through. The word project matters because an audit has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it is meant to achieve a defined result rather than continue forever like a routine business process. That result may be assurance over a control area, a review of compliance with policy, an evaluation of system security, or a judgment about whether a process is working as intended. Managing the project means deciding what needs to be done, who needs to do it, when it should happen, what evidence is needed, what problems might interrupt the work, and how the team will know the audit is complete. For beginners, one of the most important things to understand is that strong audit work is rarely the product of improvisation. Even experienced auditors depend on structure because without it, important steps get skipped, scope becomes blurry, deadlines slip, and the final report may be too weak or too late to help the organization. A good audit project begins with clarity about purpose, because no amount of scheduling or documentation can rescue an audit that never understood why it was being performed. Sometimes the purpose is driven by risk, such as concern over weak access management, unreliable change practices, or poor vendor oversight. Sometimes it is driven by a recurring audit plan, a regulatory expectation, a leadership request, or a recent incident that raised new questions. Whatever the driver, the audit team has to understand the business context well enough to shape meaningful objectives. An objective should point the team toward what it is trying to determine, not merely what area it happens to be visiting. If the audit is reviewing a payroll process, for example, the purpose is not just to look at payroll software, but to evaluate whether pay is processed accurately, access is appropriately controlled, changes are governed, and errors can be identified and corrected without causing financial or reputational harm. When the purpose is clear, later decisions about scope, evidence, timing, and staffing become much easier to make. Scope is one of the most important and most misunderstood parts of audit project management because it defines the boundaries of the work and protects the audit from becoming either too broad or too shallow. A beginner may think that a wider scope is always better, but that usually creates confusion, delays, and weaker results because the team tries to examine too many systems, too many time periods, or too many processes at once. A well-defined scope tells everyone what is included, what is excluded, which locations or systems are involved, which period is under review, and which questions the audit intends to answer. This does not make the audit rigid in a negative sense. It makes the work manageable and fair, because the people being audited know what the team is reviewing and the auditors know where to concentrate their attention. A payroll audit, for instance, might include user access, change approval, and exception handling for the last 12 months, while excluding tax policy design or benefits administration if those areas are owned elsewhere. Without that discipline, scope creep can slowly turn a focused engagement into a wandering effort that consumes time without increasing assurance. Once purpose and scope are clear, stakeholder management becomes essential because audits happen in real organizations where different groups have different responsibilities, pressures, and expectations. The audit team may need input from process owners, system administrators, business managers, security personnel, compliance staff, and executive sponsors. Each of those groups sees the environment from a different angle, and each may worry about different things, such as schedule disruption, reputational impact, or whether the auditors truly understand how the process works. Managing stakeholders does not mean trying to please everyone or softening the audit until it becomes harmless. It means communicating clearly, setting expectations early, respecting people's time, and making sure the right people are involved at the right moments. New learners should also notice that stakeholder management supports independence rather than weakening it. When roles are understood and communication is professional, the audit team is less likely to be misled by rumor, blocked by confusion, or rushed into conclusions based on incomplete information. Good relationships do not replace objectivity, but they do make it easier for objective work to happen smoothly and without unnecessary conflict. Scheduling is another major part of audit project management, and it involves much more than placing meetings on a calendar. A sound audit schedule reflects the natural sequence of the work, starting with planning and background review, moving into walkthroughs and evidence gathering, continuing through testing and analysis, and ending with reporting, management discussion, and closure. Each of those stages depends on timing, because an auditor cannot test controls intelligently without understanding the process first, and the final report cannot be written responsibly until evidence has been reviewed and conclusions have been challenged. Realistic scheduling also accounts for the availability of key personnel, the complexity of systems, the time needed to obtain evidence, and the possibility that some steps will take longer than originally expected. One of the easiest ways to weaken an audit is to create an unrealistic timeline that pressures the team into superficial work or pressures management into rushed responses. A disciplined schedule gives structure without pretending that every hour will unfold exactly as planned, and that balance is a mark of mature audit management. Resource planning sits very close to scheduling because time alone does not complete an audit. The team also needs the right mix of knowledge, attention, and support to perform the work with reasonable depth. Some audits can be handled by a small team with broad general skills, while others require people who understand a specific system, process, industry requirement, or control environment. Managing resources means thinking about who will conduct interviews, who will review evidence, who will supervise the work, and whether specialist help is needed in areas like complex infrastructure, data analysis, or application security. For beginners, it is useful to remember that having more people is not always the answer. A poorly coordinated large team can create duplication, inconsistency, and documentation problems, while a thoughtfully assigned smaller team may produce much stronger results. The project management question is whether the resources match the objectives and scope. If the audit is reviewing a highly technical environment, but no one on the team can evaluate the relevant controls with confidence, the project is already carrying quality risk before testing even begins. Every audit project also carries its own risks, and strong audit management requires identifying those risks early instead of waiting for them to become surprises. Some project risks are simple and common, such as delays in getting evidence, key staff being unavailable, or process documentation being incomplete or outdated. Others are more subtle, like misunderstanding the system boundary, relying too heavily on one source of explanation, encountering resistance from management, or discovering partway through the engagement that the environment changed significantly during the review period. These risks matter because they can affect the reliability, efficiency, and fairness of the audit itself. Managing them does not mean eliminating all uncertainty, because that is impossible. It means recognizing potential obstacles, assigning ownership, building flexibility into the plan, and escalating issues when they threaten the objectives or timetable. This is an important lesson for CISA students because audit work is not only about assessing the organization's risk. It is also about managing the risk that the audit project may fail to deliver sound assurance if it is not led carefully. A major tool in keeping the work organized is the audit work program. Even though beginners sometimes hear that phrase and imagine something overly formal or bureaucratic. In practical terms, The work program is the roadmap that translates objectives into planned procedures, evidence needs, and areas of inquiry. It helps the team move from broad intentions to specific actions by clarifying what should be reviewed, what questions should be answered, and how conclusions will be supported. A strong work program does not lock auditors into mindless repetition. Instead, it creates enough structure to promote consistency while still allowing judgment if new information changes the direction of the review. The project management value of a work program is enormous because it makes tasks visible, supports supervision, reduces duplication, and helps new team members understand how their efforts connect to the final result. It also strengthens accountability, since leaders can compare completed work to planned work and see whether the engagement is still aligned to its objectives or drifting into areas that add little value. Communication management deserves special attention because many audit problems are not caused by technical misunderstanding alone, but by late, vague, or poorly framed communication. Early communication should explain the purpose, scope, timeline, expected support, and key contacts so there is less confusion once fieldwork begins. During the audit, communication should continue in a way that keeps progress visible without overwhelming people with constant noise. If the team encounters delays, missing evidence, emerging concerns, or possible findings, those issues usually need to be discussed before the end of the engagement rather than appearing as a surprise in the draft report. This does not mean every observation must be announced the moment it crosses an auditor's mind. It means project management should create channels for timely clarification, factual validation, and issue escalation when needed. For brand new learners, this is one of the easiest points to underestimate. An audit can have strong testing and still go badly if communication is clumsy, because misunderstandings harden into defensiveness, delays multiply, and the final message loses impact. Quality management is another central responsibility in audit project management, because the value of an audit depends not only on finishing the work, but on finishing it well. Quality in this context means the procedures are relevant, the evidence is sufficient and appropriate, the conclusions are logical, the documentation is clear, and the report reflects what the work actually supports. Supervisory review plays a major role here by checking whether staff understood the objective, followed the work program appropriately, documented evidence correctly, and reached balanced conclusions rather than jumping too quickly toward a finding. Good review also looks for consistency in language, reasoning, and linkage between observed facts and reported results. For beginners, one useful way to think about audit quality is to ask whether another competent person could follow the documentation and understand how the team got from objective to conclusion. If the answer is no, then even smart work may not be dependable enough. Project management supports quality by building in review points, clarifying standards early, and making sure speed never becomes an excuse for weak evidence or careless analysis. Change management within the audit project is also critical because the environment being audited does not stop moving simply because the auditors arrived. A system upgrade may occur during field work, a key manager may leave, an incident may expose a new risk, or management may reveal a related issue that was not visible during planning. The audit team must decide whether these developments require a change in approach, a revised timeline, an adjustment to scope, or simply better documentation of context. This is where disciplined project management becomes especially valuable. Without it, teams may react emotionally, chase every new issue, or ignore meaningful changes because they do not want to disturb the original plan. A stronger approach is to assess the significance of the change, discuss implications with the right stakeholders, document decisions, and preserve the integrity of the engagement. Flexibility is not the enemy of structure. The real challenge is adapting without losing focus. And that is one of the clearest signs that an audit project is being managed thoughtfully rather than mechanically. As the audit moves toward completion, project management shifts into closure activities that are just as important as the planning stage, even though beginners sometimes assume the hard part is over once testing ends. Before reporting is finalized, observations need to be validated for factual accuracy, evidence should be organized and complete, internal review comments should be resolved, and management responses may need to be incorporated thoughtfully. Closure also involves confirming that the report says what the evidence supports, neither overstating nor understating the significance of issues. A rushed ending can undo weeks of careful work because errors, unsupported language, or unclear recommendations may weaken confidence in the audit's conclusions. There is also an administrative side to closure, such as finalizing work papers, documenting lessons learned, noting unresolved risks, and preparing for any follow-up work that may come later. In project management terms, closure is not merely the moment the report is sent. It is the disciplined completion of the engagement in a way that preserves evidence, supports accountability, and leaves the organization with a clear understanding of what was found and why it matters. It also helps new learners to understand what weak audit project management looks like, because the warning signs are often easy to recognize once you know what to watch for. A weakly managed audit may begin without clear objectives, expand its scope whenever a new question appears, depend on undocumented conversations instead of evidence, or operate on a timeline that no one honestly believes is realistic. Meetings may happen, but responsibilities remain unclear. Testing may occur, but the link between the work performed and the final conclusions is hard to follow. Findings may be technically correct, yet still lose their value because they arrive too late, lack business context, or were never discussed early enough for management to clarify misunderstandings. Strong audit project management does not eliminate difficulty, but it reduces avoidable disorder. It gives the engagement rhythm, discipline, and transparency, which helps the audit team remain objective and helps the organization receive results that are accurate, timely, and useful rather than chaotic, delayed, or needlessly adversarial. As we close, the most important idea to carry forward is that audit project management is what turns audit knowledge into reliable audit execution. A team may understand risks, controls, evidence, and reporting very well, but without clear objectives, disciplined scope, realistic scheduling, careful resource use, active communication, quality review, and orderly closure, the engagement can still fail to deliver real assurance. Managing an audit project means guiding the work so that each phase supports the next and the final report reflects a process that was thoughtful, fair, and evidence-based from start to finish. For a CISA learner, this topic is valuable because it shows that good auditing is not only about identifying weaknesses in others. It is also about managing your own work responsibly so your conclusions can be trusted. When audit project management is done well, the organization receives more than a report. It receives a structured, credible view of risk and control that leadership can use to make better decisions.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.